great. There's no problem with the underground tour. It's a great entry point. I haven't been on it in 20, 30 years
Oh,
personally.
well, maybe it's updated since then.
Well,
yeah.
Maybe it has been, but it comes from it's a third as old as Seattle is. The underground tour.
It's 50 years old.
It's been going for 50 years.
Okay.
And it's not just some assembly of a tour guide making up stuff. It's based on Bill Speidel. He wrote a bunch of books. He had this grand vision of what he thought Seattle history was, and it's kind of the distilled version of that.
All right. So Spike had made the statement on the air that this town was built on hookers and gold, which sounds like a bad Jefferson Airplane song, but is it true?
Yeah, I mean, that's the Bill Speidel story. There's
that
other
is
stories,
it,
but that's the story.
That's his spin on it, if you will.
Yeah. And
there was a seamstress union and no garment district in this town. Those are documentable facts.
Yeah, that is the fact, right?
Yeah. If you look back at like the 1900 census, like there's a ton of seamstresses,
Right.
like as professions, and we weren't making that many clothes.
But is that the colorful fact, whereas there were also very normal people who weren't involved in all of that as well?
Exactly, yeah. And I'm an engineer, so personally I'm drawn to kind of the engineering history of Seattle, which really hasn't been told. But there's this colorful history that I think is a much better entry point than engineering.
Were we
history.
at one time the paper airplane capital of the world?
Well, I'll give you a little history. The
Yeah.
biggest paper airplane festival in the world took place, and I was there.
Is that the Kingdom?
In
That's
the
very
Kingdom,
nice.
yeah.
When you write your book, we'll have you on.
Boeing engineers
I left
came-
that out.
Yeah.
I got the Kingdom in there. I didn't.
Yeah.
include the
Boeing
paper
engineers came by the thousands, and if you could put a paper airplane through the top, what's the sunroof of a car, you won it. And people by the thousands came to try to win that car.
Lost Seattle.
What Rob does is he'll take a picture of a spot, like right here on Elliott as it sits now, and a picture from 50 years ago and tell you. And right here, there was a big lumber mill before, right?
Yeah, and there was, obviously, this is a straight road, so it had streetcars running on it. One of the cool things I think about 15th, I mean, you go a little bit further and you get to 15th, but it was a little tiny road until like the 50s. And then they just knocked down a ton of buildings, a ton of people's homes.
They just took away
widened it out,
people's
yeah.
livelihood.
It's the story we have for Interstate 5, but it's the story for every major road basically in Seattle.
And didn't we have a giant, terrible fire on this property where we are right now? The Blackstone fire.
Blackstone lumber.
Yeah, that's not in here, but there were several big. It's combustible, right? So every mill, there was a big one in Ballard. There was a lot of big fires at.
Well, whole city burned to the ground in 1889, right?
Well, let's
that's the
talk
start of
about
the
that.
book.
It was
Yeah.
1889.
Yeah.
The Great Fire of Seattle. The legend I heard was that our fire chief and our mayor left town to go on a convention about how to protect your city from fires. And while they were gone on this lavish convention,
Right.
the city burned to the ground. True?
True. Yeah.
Awesome.
And there was also one of the things I have in the book is that there was a fire inspector who was here not 6 months before the fire,
And he declared it all
and he's
good.
like, "Oh, this is top rated. We'll insure you for
You
everything."
got a AAA rating.
Exactly.
How did the fire start?
It started with a glue pot being knocked over. So it was a guy working in a carpentry shop, and he knocked it over. And I don't know if I was in Boy Scouts, so I played with white gas a lot. And if you light a can of white gas on fire and knock it over, it doesn't do good things,
Right, doesn't go out.
Yeah, same thing with the glue pot. So they tried pouring water on it and just keeps spreading further and further. And it was in a basement, which is a bad thing back then because the basements are all connected through. It was a little bit outside of the.
That's why we have an underground tour.
Yeah, it's a
they
little
were
bit
all
outside-
connected, yeah.
Exactly. It was a little bit outside of the underground tour district, but the buildings are connected through wood sidewalks, and through building to building. There's no alleys between them really, so it just spreads really quick.
So
and
what I
goes
learned
to
on the
city.
underground tour, and I do love that tour, I recommend to anybody who's got people coming to town, or if you've lived here your whole life and never taken the tour, you should see it, that when the city burned to the ground, they had been going around for a long, long time about regrading Denny Hill. It was an impossibly steep hill for a city to thrive. And they've been talking about redoing the hill forever, but when the city burned to the ground, the mayors, the politicians decided we're going to do it now. And they rebuilt the roads.
So it's good that we burned to the ground.
Right. They rebuilt the roads at the soon-to-be grade of the new city. So all the roads were being built, and it took years at the time to build these roads. And they were all up at the second floors because the business owners had to remake their business, had to get back to work. So they started building these roads, and they built the buildings, but the roads were on the second floor. And people were taking ladders down to businesses and crossing the street. It was was pretty insane, right? That's all accurate stuff.
Yeah, and one of the things that got in the book is that the mayor of Seattle at the time of the fire, Robert Moran, thanks.
Moran, your buddy Moran.
Moran, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the
Moran.
guy who built Rosario.
Yeah.
Yeah, he lived right at the top of Denny Hill, so he was kind of an expert on the bad commute from the top of Denny Hill to City Hall.
And what about Lake Union? They built that. They made that, right?
Lake Union existed already.
Existed already.
Yeah, it
but
was
what
there
about
already.
they cut it? They cut the Ballard locks. They cut that
and that
channel, right? That didn't exist.
The channel did not exist, right? And then also the channel to Lake Washington did not exist. It was like a narrow strip of land that they would.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah,
It's a
they-
Montlake Cut, right? That we're talking about?
Yeah.
All right, let's get
exactly.
into the hookers. How much do you know about that?
Not an expert on hookers.
But it was a big business.
It was a big business, yeah,
And gold.
and they're tied together, yeah. So the purpose of hookers is to get the gold from the people who have the gold. I guess is one way
Sure,
to
the
look at
people
it.
coming through here with gold, and,
Well, no, the
and
people-
naturally,
People came here then
get gold.
to get supplies and take off for the Yukon Territory,
Yeah,
part of the Yukon Gold Rush. And the boats will bring them right back to Seattle. And they land in town 5 months looking at, moose and with a pocket full of gold.
you look at moose. Just about anybody will do, right?
Right, right.
but that's 1890s, right? Is
Right.
when we have the gold rush. There was little micro gold rushes all through the late 1800s. In Idaho, up in Skagit County, they're all over the place. So we were outfitting people that whole time, just on a really small scale compared to when the Alaska gold rush kicks off. And that's where and then we also had people out here working in the woods,
Right.
and doing all kinds of other laboring jobs that they come into the city and they want them to leave some money behind, and you do that with alcohol and you do it with hookers, basically. And so the business leaders were really big proponents of vice.
As an engineer and a guy who knows the history of this town so well, when Bertha suddenly hit something, what did you suspect that it was down there?
I really wanted it to be a steam engine from Yesler's mill, because his mill burnt several times, and so that's my little dream, was that one of them fell off the dock.
Were you disappointed to hear it was just a little steel pipe of some sort?
11 years old.
Yeah, disappointed is very, very disappointed. Yeah, because
You were hoping for something more historical.
and also not such a screw up, because we already knew we were going to build a tunnel, or that a tunnel was a serious possibility when that thing was dropped 11 years ago. So
Oh,
I,
someone should not have put that there.
Damn hookers.
or someone forgot to give data to somebody, so when they built their model, that they knew that there was a pipe there. Yeah.
Now, looking through your book, Seattle has a history of knocking buildings down. We basically, the Kingdome it's not an anomaly.
No.
I mean, we have throughout your book some fantastic buildings. that
Beautiful theater.
I mean, you even deal with Coliseum, Key Arena. Basically, what is it? Is that about something about our spirit that we're not tied to? Like you say, lost Seattle. We sometimes value things historically, but a lot of times we just want to make way for progress.
Yeah, that's definitely our beginnings. Our roots are progress. Don't look backwards, look forwards. Maybe it took us a little bit longer than other cities to latch onto the preservation movement.
Right. I'm looking at the Westlake monorail station, which was replaced in 1986, and I'm expecting Will Robinson and the robot and Dr. Smith to get off that monorail.
Right. Well,
because
you're
it
at
looks so period piece.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
What the end you're looking at in that photo is what is now Westlake Center.
Yeah.
That's there's the end that lands under the Needle,
Yeah.
and that end you're looking at in this photo, which is a great photo. They knocked all those buildings down and built Westlake Center Mall.
Sure.
I'm looking at these theaters: the Fox Theater, the Orpheum Theater, the Green Lake Aqua Theater. Why didn't somebody think about preserving those? Now I know the Paramount. We almost lost the Paramount, and what is it? The Egyptian is in trouble now. What?
Oh, the Egyptian up on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, the theater itself is gone. The space is still there, but yeah, it's not operating. So I don't have a good answer. Like, the people who loved the theaters were upset as they got destroyed, and like the architect, he was crying in his wine as the Orpheum was knocked down.
No. I see the lusty lady here. Was that did you shed a tear when that closed in 2010? Where do you go now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Lusty Lady sign is preserved at Mohi, right?
Yeah.
The Museum of History and Industry.
But all these, there's a bunch of wannabe signs out there, showgirls and stuff. None of them really rise to the level of
Rob Ketcherside, the
Lost
author
Lady.
of Lost Seattle, which is available now at Amazon if you want. It's a really beautiful picture book to have
Thank
about
you.
Seattle. Where do you think Seattle's future lies?
Oh, that's a great question. The future of Seattle. I think that there's, when you look back at history, one of the things that really interests me is the decisions that were made and the outcomes of them, right? So I think that one of the great things for Seattle, and everybody else as well, one of the great things for Seattle is now we have better access to the records of what happened, so we can make better decisions for the future. So I think that one thing, for example, is that we're going to have, there's not going to be such wanton destruction of the environment like for the waterfront, and we're going to have more porous. It's going to be more accessible to people, and it's going to just be really.
You like the tunnel?
I like one of the outcomes, which is an open waterfront.
Yeah,
you don't like the viaduct. You're not a viaduct fan.
Not a viaduct.
I was a huge viaduct fan because of it was probably the most scenic road going in Seattle.
Yeah, I lived about 8 blocks from it. It wasn't fun to walk under. That's my take on it.
It's kind of a wonderful place for homeless people to live too. And discarded needles and things like that, and human squatters doing their defecation. It was perfect for
That's
that.
what I like about it.
Yeah.
My dog loved the rats.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. Well, it's very nice to meet you. The book will be linked to at bobrivers.com. Rob Ketcherside, the author of Lost Seattle.